You need help with your reactive horse, chances are what you actually need doesn't actually have anything to do with your horse at all. Before you leave, let me explain myself. I have made so many videos lately about your reactive horse or your spooky horse, and I'll link some of those down below. And I've also made a personality quiz that seems to be really helpful for a lot of you in terms of diagnosing why your horse might be reactive. But what we haven't talked about very much yet is what you can do if you have a reactive horse to help them to feel more confident with you. So if you're new here, I'm Ruby. I'm a whole horse stewardship trainer, and I have been helping horses and humans for over a decade now to have a deeper bond and better relationship. And one thing that I've found through that time is that there are four core personalities between horses and humans, and some of those work really well together, and some of those just have a little bit of a harder time. Doesn't mean you can't still have a good relationship with your horse, but just means you might have to work a little bit harder and have a little more targeted strategy. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So last weekend, I had a mini clinic that was all about communication between horse and human. And we went into all kinds of really interesting things. But there was one particular experiment we did that really has stuck with me and that I thought might be useful for you to know if you have a reactive horse. So, one thing that we did is we all took a moment to really feel in our bodies a moment of to remember a moment in our bodies of stress and anxiety with our horses. So, a time that you really truly felt unsafe, or a time that you really truly felt scared or nervous, or that your horse was being in some way unsafe around you. And we really tried to actually bring that feeling up in our body to really feel it and almost feel like we were reliving that moment. And once we had that, we went and took our horses for a little walk, just like 5 steps and then come back 5 steps. And what was interesting was a lot of the horses, as soon as the people started to feel this tension and this this nervousness in their bodies, come on, go play. As soon as the people started to feel this in their bodies, their horses got tense and their horses did a little bit of that. Yeah, go over there if you're going to do that, not close to me. And so what we found was that the horses started to be a little bit more reactive. They started to have their ears perked. They were looking at things that they weren't looking at before. Their eyes were tense, their mouths were tense. So after we did that little experiment, then we came back and we all did a little grounding exercise. So I'll walk you through this exercise now so you can try this with your own horse later. So we took a moment to feel our feet and to feel almost imaginary roots growing through our feet, securing us to the ground. And those roots were growing through the arena sand and through the sublayer and through the clay soil and all the way down into the water table. And then we imagined the same for our horses. We took a few good deep breaths here and really felt the security of being attached to the earth. And then we took the same little mini walk. We took just a few steps away and a few steps back. And what was fascinating, as soon as we did that, the horses were licking and chewing it instantly. As soon as the people took their first deep breath, the horses relaxed, their heads dropped, their ears relaxed, their eyes relaxed. One horse even leaned in and kind of leaned on his person. So it was a really, really sweet moment where the horses really started to ground and connect. One of the biggest takeaways from this, though, was I asked everybody what they had noticed, and one participant in particular really articulately explained that when she was feeling nervous in her body, she read into every little thing her horse did as a possible prelude to an explosion or prelude to a spook, that she saw every little twitch of her horse's ear or look or twitch in her horse's body as something she needed to be defensive of and ready for. And after she did the breathing and grounding exercise, she saw the same things as just her horse exploring her environment. And so it just changed her perception of what her horse was experiencing and what her horse might be about to do next. So I thought that was really fascinating. And with that, I would encourage you to go try that yourself with your own horse and see what you experience and notice of your horse and of yourself. The other thing that is really important to note here is that not all people are the same. As I'm sure you figured out by now, there is a personality quiz linked below that you can take to find out a little bit more about yourself as well as your horse. And that might give you a lot more information about how you can use what we're going to talk about next here. But the important thing to know is that what you do when your horse reacts is going to impact how your horse reacts. So you are constantly in communication with your horse, whether you realize it or not, about what is safe and what's not safe. And your horse is constantly picking up on little signals from you that you're putting out about the safety of their environment. Horses are herd animals and they derive their safety from each other. And so as such, if your horse isn't finding its safety from other horses around them, it's looking to you for that safety. And so if your heart rate elevates, if your breathing gets shallow and fast, your horse is also going to respond in kind with more tension and nervousness. So what we can do with that is we can take a moment to reflect on ourselves and to learn a little bit about how we handle stress and fear and what that might be telling our horse when we do that. And so, with that, there are 4 main personality types that I've been working with. And the first one is what I call feelers. Feelers are people that feel things really, really deeply. They also tend to be intensely loyal and they tend to be a little bit more on the quiet side. When feelers perceive a threat, they tend to get really anxious and tight, but they don't really act on it. So, where you might see like this horse, when she kind of spooked a minute ago, she got like really big and exploded. That's not feeler energy. Feeler energy is they just kind of ball up and tighten and tighten and tighten until the explosion has nowhere else to go. And then that's when it comes out everywhere. So, if you are a feeler, your best tool is going to be to learn to regulate yourself with a couple of deep breaths or a grounding exercise. And I have lots of videos on those again, link below. Then to take a moment to just determine with your logical brain online, is this actually a threat? Or is this just something my brain is perceiving as a threat that's not actually dangerous? And so, what that might look like is I used to work with a woman who was really nervous her horse was going to spook at bikes. And so what would happen is we would see a bike on the trail and she would get really tense and nervous. And lo and behold, her horse would spook. But if the woman wasn't riding a horse, if I was riding a the horse had no problem with bikes. So the horse wasn't spooking at the bikes, the horse was spooking at the woman being nervous of the bikes. And as soon as we learned an exercise to help the woman get back into her like logical thinking brain, and we were able to ask her, is the bike actually a threat or not? And she would say, no, the bike is not a threat. The horse no longer spooked at bikes. It was as simple as that. The second type are achievers. Achievers are people who are very ambitious. They tend to be athletes. They tend to have big dreams, big goals. They want to get things done, but they also tend to be really overthinkers and they tend to kind of wear their emotions more on the outside. So an achiever is somebody who might seem a little bit more volatile, but what's really happening is that they're just showing you everything they're feeling, where a feeler is hiding it a little bit more. And so if you are this type, if you're like super competitive and ambitious and you tend to start overthinking and being hard on yourself and hard on your horse, the best thing you can do, same grounding and regulating exercise, but then instead of asking, is this a threat or not, you're going to ask, how important is this? How big of a deal is this? Do I need to do something about this right now? And then you're going to say, what's the least possible action I can take? So as an achiever, your instinct is going to be to go above and beyond every single time. But all that's going to do is continue to overwhelm you and your horse. And what you really need to do is come back to a place where you can have a conversation and be connected and find safety with each other. And doing more is just going to make that harder. So if you're an achiever, you're going to want to take a moment to take that deep breath to regulate and ground yourself, and then find out what is the least possible action you can take to fix this situation. Then, if you are what's called a cruiser, the cruisers are the people that tend to be, they're not as sensitive. These are the people that tend to kind of like not even notice their horse is spooking and they're kind of off in la la land. A lot of times these people are actually really well suited with a reactive horse because they don't feed into it at all. They kind of are just like, oh, the horse is spooking and we move on. But if you're a cruiser, something that could happen is when your horse spooks, you could shut down. And so if you find yourself, your horse is spooking and you freeze and you kind of shut down and stop doing anything at all and kind of ignore the situation, what we actually want to do for you is actually kind of upregulate you a tiny bit. We want you to kind of come online and become available to help your horse in this situation and available for connection instead of just shutting down and pretending they don't exist in this moment. And so what you're going to do, same thing, a couple of deep breaths, and then you're going to think sort of similarly to the achiever, but instead of the least possible action, because we're already doing the least possible action, you're going to ask yourself, what would be the most helpful thing for my horse that I could do right now? So if it's walking away from the scary thing, if it's going and checking out the scary thing and bringing in some curiosity, if it's moving their feet a bit and trotting some figure eights, kind of thinking through what are my tools when my horse is spooking and how can I take that and turn it into something more productive. And then if you are a voyager, which is somebody who's very curious, you're very like exploratory, you want to go check things out, you want to do things, you want to learn everything, but can also result in you kind of being a little bit of a hot mess where you kind of have your fingers in every pot and you're kind of not totally committed to anything. Sometimes the voyagers are people that kind of throw the spaghetti at the wall. So when something goes wrong, you kind of are just like, I'm gonna do it all. I'm gonna check out the scary thing, and we're gonna walk away, and we're gonna move the feet, and we're and. And that's also not helpful. So, similar to the achiever, if you're a voyager, your thing is going to be to take that moment to slow your body and mind down, to regulate a little bit with a couple deep breaths or feeling into your feet. And then you're going to ask yourself, what is the most streamlined, most helpful thing? And I'm going to let go of everything else. So, I'm not trying to try a little bit of everything, but I'm trying to do one thing really, really well. So if all of this is helpful and you're ready for the next step of how you would actually apply this to your horse and your horse's personality, go watch this video because that one's going to go into a lot more detail about how to actually take all of this that you just learned about yourself and apply it to your specific horse. And if you want to know more about your personality or your horse's personality, you can take the quiz linked below. And until next time, make sure to hug your horse for me.